The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Cowboys Camping Out.
Presented by Solo Stove.
And broadcasting live from training camp in Oxnard, California.
Hey guys, welcome into our podcast, Camping Out, presented by Solo Stove. We are here in Oxnard, and we are so excited to recap the first day of training camp for the Dallas Cowboys. Nick Eatman, Patrik Walker, Hailey Sutton, Nick Harris, and Kyle Youmans joining you here. Guys, this is so exciting for me because this is my first opportunity, obviously, to be here at training camp. Nick, I know this is the case for you as well, but for some of you veterans, you've been here before, you've seen how this works, so I want to open it up to you guys. Just what's the feeling going into training camp 2023? Nick, I'll start with you, just the excitement going into this year.
Well, the excitement for me is that, on one hand, everything isn't, this is something we've seen before, at least I've seen it before. I've been out here, this golf course, all that. But, every once in a while things change. Like there's a campfire, or there's a Nick Harris here. There's another Nick, So, it is cool on one hand that it's always something different, but yet things change and then they don't at the same time. And that's what I think what keeps it fun. And today it was fun. It was like, welcome to training camp.
Yeah, we have a lot of headlines to get to. Patrik, for you, obviously, you were here last year. What are some headlines and stuff that you were looking forward to prior to all of the news that we got today?
I mean, and prior to this and, the reported contract situation with Zach Martin, for me it was the excitement of seeing what Brandon Cooks will bring to the offense for the Cowboys, because we know what Stephon Gilmore does. We know what he's going to bring, and what Brandon Cooks does, but we're entering a camp wherein the Cowboys offense needs to have a bounce-back year, and if they can match serve with what the defense has already proven and the fact that the defense might even level up, I mean, this could be a very special year, and that's exciting.
Obviously, the topic of conversation today has been the contract situation, whether it's holdouts or getting an extension. And Nick Harris, for you, welcome to Cowboys training camp. Less than 5 minutes after we wrap up our initial press conference with Jerry and Steven and Mike, we get the news that Trayvon Diggs has been extended. Talk us through that deal and what that means for this Cowboys organization.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a large handful of guys who are awaiting contract extensions. And Steven and Jerry, throughout the spring, they were kind of hush on exactly how they wanted to play about going about each deal. And, there wasn't an order by any means, but Trayvon Diggs is the first one that gets it. He's going to be the fourth highest paid cornerback in the NFL now. He gets a 5-year extension, $97 million. So, it's big time for Trayvon just because he can lock down that spot and really hone in on his craft over the next 6 years. And he becomes that Cowboys franchise corner. I feel like it's really the first one that the Cowboys have had since Dion. So it's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, and that paycheck for Trayvon, too, is a little bit exciting to see, even from the outside looking in. Kyle, for you, we had a chance to hear from Steven and Jerry and Mike McCarthy earlier. Besides this big Trayvon news, what were some of the takeaways that you took from that press conference?
Well, I think it starts with the expectation. I mean, there's always high expectations. Every team has everything in front of them whenever they start training camp. But you can realistically put that list down to 8 or 9 teams that legitimately have a shot to win it all. And this is a team that, at least on paper, looks like they have that shot going into training camp. And so I think a lot of it was the expectations that have been put on the table, not only because of those off-season acquisitions and not only because of some of the leadership that's returning, but some of the youth that's coming up as well. And this is a camp where there are a lot of battles. There are a lot of position groups that are going to have a chance to win spots. I mean, you talk about wide receiver, cornerback, and it might not be that number 1 spot or that number 2 spot, but it's going to be those 3rd and 4th spots that are definitely up for grabs. Tons of training camp battles that are going to be on the line, and if you're ever going to make that run, you're going to win a championship, and they said it today, you need every person on your roster to be all in, and you're going to start to see that here in Oxnard. That's what's most exciting for me, and one of the early takeaways that we have.
It's interesting, too, you mentioned about everybody being all in. Obviously, the elephant in the room here is that Zach Martin is not present with us. Jerry and Steven both adamant in saying that they weren't going to discuss business with football. But just how big of a deal is that for a guy like Zach Martin, who's had the career that he has, making a stand and not coming to training camp.
Yeah, I thought I would see a campfire at training camp before I would see Zach Martin not
Here we are.
at camp. Yeah, here we are.
Missed it by a couple hours.
Yeah.
Almost got there.
You know, and that's what kind of the stuff I was talking about earlier is that even though you think you've seen it all, other than a Super Bowl and NFC Championship game for me, but I've seen just about everything else. I'm surprised with the Zach Martin move, but at the same time, I understand it because when everyone's getting a bag, you want one too. When you are the best player and the most consistent player on the team, so I could argue both sides of this, but I understand where Zach's coming from. I think if this is what he hasn't missed anything yet, we'll see, but I think it's going to be interesting how it plays out.
For me, I have so many fans asking me what my level of concern is. Not necessarily in the aspect of will the situation get resolved, but more so in the aspect of, and I know we had a mailbag question about this, if it comes to a situation where Zach Martin misses some or all of training camp, am I concerned with him stepping in on day one? The answer is absolutely no. I'm more concerned with getting a concussion from the moon falling out of the sky and hitting me in the back of the head right now. Zach
Or
Martin,
those golf balls that are on the
yeah.
offense actually probably
Or on
would have
like
been
hole
better.
16.
That's what I'm watching here.
Exactly. Zach Martin is the consummate pro on and off the field. He is arguably, and I don't know who'd argue against it, the best player on this team. He's the best guard in the business and has been for most of his career. Definitive first ballot Hall of Famer. It's a consensus there. Zach Martin could miss the entirety of training camp, and hopefully that's not the case. We'll see how it plays out. But if he does, I'm not concerned about his level of play. But circling back to the contract situation, I'm also not concerned about the Cowboys' ability to resolve that because, again, it's Zach Martin, so you'll get it done.
Yeah, that's kind of the energy that I felt as well when we were having that conversation at the press conferences. They didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want to tip anybody's hand in terms of what they were thinking. On the flip side of that, I guess behind that offensive line, you have Dak Prescott, the quarterback who everybody's been talking about. I literally listened to all of the shows this morning on ESPN and all that talk about Dak and the expectations that Dak has with this organization. Where do you see his focus going in? I mean, obviously he took the whole offense on a trip last week to Atlanta just to get their minds right, to get them ready for training camp, and also he's been working with them in the Dak yard all offseason. Where do we see Dak? What are our expectations for him coming into training camp?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this new offense that has been structured around Mike McCarthy, it's structured around Dak and his language. Mike McCarthy said it best. And, whenever Dak talks about this offense, he gets a little extra layer of excitement just because he's going to be putting the air through the ball, don't get me wrong, but being able to integrate the running game in a little bit different ways. I think that's going to be what's really interesting whenever we come out and finally see this product on the field. And I think that allows Dak to be a lot more free and allows everybody to be on the same page a little bit more. And that's always what comes up when we look at or we ask about what is the main difference between last year's offense and this year's offense. It's last year there was a little bit layer of unexpected. This year there's a layer of expected. So we'll see that play out on the field. I'm excited to see it happen. But if anyone should be happy about it, it should be Dak Prescott.
Well, I think the other elephant in the room, you talked about Zach Martin earlier being that elephant. I think there's a second elephant, and it was the turnovers. This is a quarterback that statistically throughout his career has taken care of the football. And yes, he's had double-digit interceptions, and that's a normal thing in the NFL. I mean, look at any quarterback really outside of Aaron Rodgers, and there's going to be double-digit interceptions if you're throwing the ball as much as this offense and as much as Dak Prescott has. But 15 interceptions in the amount of games that he played last year is not acceptable in his mind. And he knows that more than anybody. I mean, fans have certainly harped on that significantly throughout. And I think, like you said, the work that he's doing with the wide receivers and with these pass catchers, I think it goes to show that he is focused on limiting the turnovers by making sure everybody's on the same page, making sure that everyone knows their role, knows their job going into it, and that Dak knows everybody else's role as well. And so I think for the most part, the turnovers are going to be a big topic of conversation no matter what happens, whether he's throwing an interception or he's not throwing an interception. Everybody's going to be on the edge of their seat watching Dak to wait for that moment. And I think for Dak Prescott, he doesn't want that moment to come very quickly. He wants it to be later in the season after he's thrown a couple touchdowns first.
Yeah, and it's important to note as well, and I know that we all know this because it's a conversation that we've had, but the interceptions weren't all on Dak, right? There was timing issues, there was personnel issues, all of these factors. And so now that you've kind of seen the work that he's done in this offseason to really build that rapport so that can't be an excuse anymore, I think that's incredibly interesting. And I think, too, when you look at some of the players they brought in, which we'll get into in the second half here, but we had a chance to hear from Michael Gallup yesterday. You know, we knew that he wasn't on his game last year in terms of the mental side of things. Now that we've had a chance to kind of check in with him, Nick, for Michael Gallup to be stepping back into that role, after you heard him speak the other day, what stood out to you about that?
Well, I think that he's obviously excited about this opportunity, because this is one of those things where, you know, we say less is more. Sometimes more is more. And I think for Brandon Cooks coming in here with CD, you know, that's one thing that I really like about what's happening is they've added big players in Gilmore and Cooks that they're going to be playing alongside two of the best players here. And so with CD and also with Diggs. And when Gallup falls in, I mean, it's turned into a pick your poison. It really is. And so as long as I've said it 1,000 times before, as long as they catch the football, and when they don't volley it up in the air, you know. But and that was some of the interceptions. Some are on Dak too. I'm not just putting it on the tipped interceptions.
Tipped.
Tipped. Yeah.
Keyword.
Tipped. Yeah.
If you know, you know.
Enunciate. Yeah.
You know.
So I think it's going to be a great time for Gallup, and you know that second year off the ACL is usually the one where they really just don't even think about it and they're coming into their own.
I think it's a bounce back season for Michael Gallup. I'm on record as saying that on the podcast and written content, and I believe that when you tandem the extended length of time now removed from the torn ACL with the addition of Brandon Cooks, and you start seeing Mike McCarthy, he's going to take over the play calling duties. They're bringing in, you know, new football analysts, which, you know, seems that they're going to lean more towards that. It's all very interesting, very intriguing. And then when you talk to Michael Gallup and you see the air that's around him right now, this air that's around Michael Gallup, this air of confidence, this confidence was kind of absent when he came back last season because he was unsure of that knee. The knee has been structurally sound for months, but he needed this offseason to get more comfortable with it. That work you spoke about that he's been doing with Dak Prescott in the Dak yard. When we watched Michael Gallup in OTAs and in minicamp, and we talked to a lot of players, and Dak Prescott himself said they had to pull the reins on Michael Gallup and say, hey, we know that you're springy. We know that you're bouncy. We know you want to get out there and do some things, but just calm down, time and place for everything. But that goes to his mindset right now, Michael Gallup's mindset being he's ready to get out there and start eating.
Well, think about the two E's, experience and expectation, and he's got both of those. He's the most experienced wide receiver in the wide receiver room going into this
Isn't
year.
that crazy to think about?
It's a crazy stat, yeah.
I mean, he is the elder statesman now in terms of the wide receivers.
Wow.
Not elder,
now,
Kyle.
I will say,
No,
Brandon Cooks has been in the NFL longer, but as far as being in this locker room, Michael Gallup has been there longer, and he has done that. And then you also talk about it. I think it is a good thing.
If you've been there the longer than anyone else, is that a good thing?
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, or it can be.
Well done. Yeah.
It can, because no one's surprised about that. Like, that's crazy about Gallup. It's like, yeah.
There's Nick.
Yeah.
But I also going along with the experience is the expectation. I mean, last year with the departure of Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup was expected to be your number two.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt in your mind. Once he was back, he's your number two, and that's where you were at. And then you were hoping a Jalen Tolbert could take the number three reign, so on and so forth. Neither one of those things really happened for the wide receivers. It never really came to fruition. Now, instead of being not even pigeonholed, nailed into that number two spot last year, he's a little bit further down. He's that number three. So instead of having to be an above average number two, he can step in and be a great number three receiver. And I think even that brings him that ease, brings him that confidence that not only has he been here, but now he's got a chance to do some things further and not have that same level of expectation and pressure on his shoulders.
You know, I would say, looking at Cooks and Gallup, I would put them at 2A and 2B just because of how their games complement each other. You know, you can put either in the slot, you put either outside. They can all run a various route tree. I think when we look at the end of the season, those two guys are very close in stats. Just
2A?
because.
I've never understood that.
Say it with your chest, Nick.
It's Brandon Cooks.
Say it with your
Yeah, there you go. Say it with your chest.
I've never understood that 1A, 1B, because you're still putting someone ahead.
For
so
sure.
I'm just curious.
For sure.
But
Just
I
putting
get
him in
it.
the same echelon.
Yeah.
Because,
Right.
I could definitely see at the end of the season, Brandon Cooks, 850 yards, Michael Gallup, 820. And, they're right there. Maybe
That'd be
Gallup
a
has
great
more
year.
touchdowns. You know, that would be a
fantastic.
phenomenal season.
You know, it kind of reminds me of, a really good, a basketball team that has a ton of shooters. Maybe they're not all going to be on one
Is that
night.
the Warriors? Are you talking about the Warriors?
I was kind of thinking them when they were really doing their thing. And if for that one night out of the century when Curry's not on, Clay will be on. It's just like you just can't stop everyone. And so you're right. It's like it might be Cooks one night. And then what we're going to talk about all week about, man, what are you going to do about Cooks? And then he'll have 4 catches for 22 yards and Gallup will have 190 or whatever. And CD just does his thing. That's what's great thing about having so many options.
For
And
sure.
I
I think-
did not have in San Francisco.
And
For
I think better still when it comes to, you talk about Michael Gallup's confidence in himself, the offensive play calling staff, Mike McCarthy heading that, he has demonstrated he has that same confidence in Michael Gallup. When you hear Mike McCarthy say things like they're going to make Michael Gallup a little bit more versatile in where they use him, that's basically tipping the hand on purpose to say, hey, you're not going to always know where Michael Gallup is going to be lined up. We know that traditionally in his career with the Cowboys, more often than not, he's been that go deep, take the top off, and break the game open that way. But now we're going to see Michael Gallup in the slot, and we're going to see him moving around and really expanding his route tree. So that goes to the confidence not only that Gallup has in himself, but Mike McCarthy now has in seeing Gallup in this offseason saying, hey, mentally, you're there now.
Let's. Kyle's gonna fix our fire for us
Oh,
here on
yeah.
our solo stove.
That's a little hot.
But
Not gonna lie.
as Kyle adjusts the fire, there's no doubt that the true fire on this team comes from the defensive side of the ball.
Nice.
Right? That's
Yeah,
smart.
I like that.
Bars.
That was
That
nice.
was right out the
That was
closet.
well done.
That was better than mine.
Yeah, that's
I was saying we didn't start the fire.
In all
It's been burning since
seriousness,
the
though,
world's been turning.
we also got to hear from J-Ron yesterday, J-Ron Curse. He talked about how healthy he was, how excited he was to get started on a year where he's not having to battle through a ton of injuries. But just the defensive side of the ball in general, there's been talks about them being the best in the NFL or one of the best at the very least. How much does this team or how much should this team rely on the defense, kind of like they did last year when they lost Dak, or how are we feeling about that?
I think that the fact that they could be the best in the NFL, that's the goal. That's a realistic goal, to be the best defense in the NFL. And whether they are, if you fall short of that, you're still probably a really, really good defense, a great defense. So I think that's the key. But to have a great defense, you got to have great players. And there's two of the best of their position right now. Trayvon, which they paid, and Micah, which hasn't gotten paid yet, but man, when he does, oh man,
That number's going to be staggering.
that's going to be unbelievable. But you need difference makers, you really do, and they have that, and I think that helps everybody else. And it sounds like J-Ron Curse is ready to compete.
Oh,
because
yeah.
while we were
Oh, yeah.
eating, I
Oh,
think they were
yeah.
playing cards on
They
the other
were.
side, and he is the loudest one in the room.
You
And he's-
always
you
know
made
where
sure.
J-Ron is, no matter where it's at.
There's competition consistently at camp, whether it's riding the bikes furthest down. And I mean, even that you got to be careful, of course.
Yeah.
Even Dan Quinn earlier was saying, don't fall fall off the bike.
Let me tell you something about. We were on the bus going over there. Nick, you were with me, I believe.
Yes.
And the guys were walking in, and Tyler Smith, who's a big guy.
Yeah.
He has the loudest high five or hands I've ever seen. Am I wrong? Like when they were walking in, it was like Williams right here. William Boykins was here. It was like really like loud. It was like
Firecrackers
they
going
were
off.
ready to go. I mean,
Just a mean
it was unbelievable. And I know that sounds silly.
I mean, have you seen his bench ability? I mean, he's got some strength in there, so
Yeah.
it's streaked on
How
strength.
loud do
That's
we
true.
think Mozzie's high five is?
No,
Oh,
Tyler
I don't
Smith
wanna
and
find
Mozzie together high-fiving.
I feel like
I'm
Mozzie
not-
would not
I
put
will
it
not
to the
volunteer
lake.
a tribute.
That's
for
the big
Mozzie's-
boom.
Okay,
That's the big
okay.
boom.
I got one for you because the one-on-ones typically happen at the same time. Okay, so decision to make. It's about the same time. Right over here, Diggs is CD going at it. First one, Mozzie and Tyler Smith in a one-on-one battle right here. Which one are you watching? Or are you gonna take your
Smith
phone?
v. Smith.
I'm watching Mozzie.
Smith on
I'm
Smith
watching
crime.
Mozzie
I'm watching
and
Smith
Tyler.
and
As-
Smith.
Because
as-
listen, I'm sure that Trayvon CD that would be interesting. It would not be nearly as interesting
Yeah.
We've seen that.
as
Smith on
Mozzie
Smith.
and
We've
Tyler.
seen
Yeah, right. Like we got that, but Mozzie, I think that's gonna be.
But even if
that
it
would
was
be better.
Stephon and CD, I'm going to see the Smiths. I want to see how
Yeah.
ready Mozzie is.
And,
I
and,
mean,
to that point,
we're
oh
fired
my
up
God,
here.
When practices really get going, that Mozzie Smith versus Tyler Smith
It's
battle.
gonna be good.
I mean, this is the Hulk versus
true.
Thanos. That's
Yeah.
going to be fantastic. But
Hulk versus Thanos.
I'm telling you. But to your question, first of all, I'd be remiss if I did not sit here and give the Cowboys an ovation for the fact that we're sitting here in 2023 and we're talking about leaning on the Cowboys defense we're not far removed from the Mike Nolan days, and as great of a coach as Rob Marinelli was, that defense just really couldn't get things gelled. But in Dan Quinn's short time here, he's already turned this defense into one of the best in the league, and statistically in several categories, the best in the league, to the point where we're looking at the Cowboys offense, which just a couple of years ago
was the best in the league.
Cowboys were leaning on that offense.
Yeah.
So, first of all, that's fantastic. But I will also say I believe unequivocally, if you go and ask every single player or any player on the Cowboys offense, none of them will talk about leaning on the defense. They all take ownership of wanting to
back to the competition.
Yeah, they want to be the ones that everybody looks at and say, of course they want the defense to shine, but they also want to be the reason or the big contributor to the Cowboys potentially getting ring number 6. They don't want it, when it's all said and done, if the Cowboys do make this a very special season and get the 6th franchise ring, the Cowboys offense will be there celebrating and happy and thankful that the defense did their job. But none of those offensive players want to hear the narrative that it only happened because of defense.
I'll say this, though, and my favorite thing that I loved about what Des Bryant did when he was here is he brought the level of competition in practice every single day.
Yeah.
He was that guy like J-Ron all the time. And then
the real X.
Yeah.
Sorry, Elon.
Hey, the best moment of camp out here was when he called out about 7 corners in a row.
You can't stop.
You can't guard me. You can't guard me. You can't guard me. You know, you can't guard me. But no, and who's that guy? Who's that guy on offense? Because you know, you look at the best players. There's on offense. There's still kind of the quiet one. Zach, Tyron, Pollard, CD, kind of
Brandon.
CD will talk. Brandon. Somebody's got to be that guy that says, all right, enough of this. Enough of this. J-Ron Curse and Micah and Trayvon talking. We got to bring it. So that's what I'm excited to see on offense.
I think that's Dak.
It might be.
That is most
I
certainly
was going to
Dak.
say it might be Dak.
Out
That
of the
is most
guys you
certainly
named,
Dak.
it's got to be Dak,
Or
right?
Rush. I'm kidding.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead on that note. We're going to go ahead and take our break here on Camping Out, presented by Solo Stove.
Before we do that, if we've got a campfire,
Oh,
we got to find out, right? We'll do this in the break.
We're
But I
gonna
got
make
some
some
s'mores. How about
s'mores.
that? Pass this around.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got s'mores, and we'll talk more about some of those position battles here on Camping Out. Thank you, Kyle.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Are you ready to take coffee off your grocery list forever? Black Rifle Coffee Club is here to help. As a coffee club member, you'll get your favorite coffees roasted, packaged, and shipped to your door free of charge on your preferred schedule. Set it, forget it, and never run low on coffee again. Members also get exclusive deals on coffee, products, and discounts from partner brands. Ease your mind and let Black Rifle worry about your coffee supply. Go to blackriflecoffee.com to join the coffee club today.
Cowboys fans, after that move, we've just coined the term Rowdy Replay. Let's roll back the tape.
Okay, there's our mascot Rowdy cheering on the boys, and now he's on his phone on his Bank of America mobile banking app?
Staying on top of his finances with his virtual financial assistant, Erica.
Bank of America's digital tools are so impressive. Cowboys fans just can't stop banking. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/can't-stop-banking.
Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. Member FDIC.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag and Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag and Turf, the official Ag and Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit UnitedAgAndTurf.com to find a location near you.
Back to Cowboys Camping Out.
Welcome back to Camping Out, presented by Solo Stove. And guys, obviously this is so much fun roasting marshmallows. You guys are having some issues over here catching them on fire.
It's a little hot.
It's hot on this side.
I'm gonna blame that on myself. I think I put one too many logs in the Solo Stove.
But how
It's too
interesting is
good.
this? We're sitting out here. Obviously, the weather is beautiful, and we've got this fire in front of us. It's not too hot. It's not smoking up at all on it. That's one of the benefits to this Solo Stove is that there's no smoke.
Well, the people in Texas that are watching this,
Yes.
like, I hate all of so much because we have this without the fire. Like,
right,
Yeah,
you could probably roast a marshmallow from outside.
This is Texas.
This is Texas right here.
You can use your promo code Cowboys10 to get $10 off your new Solo Stove pit and finally escape that smoke for good. Like I said, we've been sitting here for about 30 minutes now. We haven't had any issues, so this has been great.
The funny thing is you said $10 off, right? Like on the promo code. I'm gonna order this and ship it back.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ship it back automatically.
It's great.
I'm a big campfire guy. If you can't tell, I brought the s'mores. I got the log.
I am making a wonderful mess of all
this is my thing.
I am making a wonderful mess.
This is my thing, guys.
Let's talk a little bit about what to expect here at Cowboys training camp this year, because obviously we talked about, the press conference and all of that. To me, there's some really interesting position battles that will go on over the next couple of weeks, and we touched on it a little bit with Michael Gout. This is the biggest position battle right here.
microphone versus Patrik. So far.
You can move it.
Can we get a zoom in on
You can move the microphone. Dude, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
This is your show.
It is everywhere.
We need a play.
No, it's so good. So good.
Okay, well, while Patrik
This is
sorts
all
this
authentic,
out,
ladies and gentlemen.
we're
This is
trying
how
to-
we do.
I
This
don't
is how we do.
At this point, I don't know who will be the starter,
This
the
is how we do.
marshmallow or you or your mic. It's to be determined.
Little Stay Puft going on here.
Let's talk about the wide receiver group first, because to me,
All right, receiver, go.
because to me, we have 1, 2, 3 sorted out as we discussed, but 4 and kind of under that, there's a lot of question marks. The Cowboys added a lot of wide receiver power in this. I can't with Patrik.
Focus.
Yeah, it's really hard to focus here.
Jalen Tolbert, Simi Fehoko. That's where my mind goes initially.
Camp
and
battle.
Who's going to be,
Camp battle.
at that number 4 spot. Now that we've kind of seen what they bring to the table, who has the edge there, or what's the expectation for that spot?
Well, I think right now, at least based off of the early parts of OTAs and minicamp, Brian Schottenheimer even talked about it. Both of them have seen a step up. Both of them have continued to grow in their respective positions and in their responsibilities. But it seems like Jalen Tolbert might be the guy who's taken that leap furthest. And it's been talked about in the NFL before, that second-year jump, taking year 1 to year 2 and having that full offseason in the NFL for the first time and trying to take advantage of that and make that jump. Well, the fact that Tolbert has established a better connection with Dak Prescott. He's done everything he's needed to do to continue to do that, but he's also latched on to a guy like Brandon Cooks, who's been there and done that in terms of his career already in a very similar skill set. I think Jalen Tolbert might have the early leg up. And I still think Simi Fehoko has an advantage just being 1 year in the NFL further. But from a Jalen Tolbert's standpoint, I think he has more to prove going into this year than a Simi Fehoko does.
Absolutely, and both of these guys have urgency, and I think
Yeah.
urgency will create even more competition. You look at Simi Fehoko, he's been in the building. This is his opportunity to get on the field now. And he showed out in training camp last year, battled some injuries, wasn't really able to get the on-field product there, which is unfortunate. And then you have Jalen Tolbert on the other hand, who, if you ask him, he'll straight out tell you, year 1 did not go how I planned it to go. And, I think there's an extra layer of urgency there with him going into year 2, being able to prove that, he is a valuable reason why to be a high draft pick. And, if I had to pick one right now, I actually think it's pretty difficult. I hear a lot of Tolbert answers quite a bit, and I don't think there's a wrong answer, but I think Fehoko has done a lot this offseason to not only get his body right, like you said, his mentorship with Brandon Cooks, I think is going to help a lot in that department, but also getting closer with Dak Prescott and getting closer with this receiver group. I think it's going to be a very interesting battle, and I also won't count out a couple of these undrafted free agents that they have. Jalen Moreno-Cropper is a guy I've been super high on throughout this process. I think he's a guy that's at least going to push these other guys and make it an interesting competition.
Nick, real quick, I want to go back to Nick really quick, because you were at the Senior Bowl and you had an opportunity to speak with Jalen Tolbert about that first year. So if you could just share a little bit about that conversation.
And it was funny because it went full circle today, like a few hours ago at ordering ice cream. But no, but we talked at the Senior Bowl in the rain. It was raining, and that's his home turf in Mobile, South Alabama. And he came back and he was talking about how he didn't know a whole lot about last year. It's kind of what Nick was saying. Just from packing here at camp to lining up right, then and he takes all of that. But he was so excited about this year, and we sort of talked about it on the staff because a lot of us have had conversations, and we kind of got to the point. All right, enough. He's got to do it at camp. He's got to do it at camp. And so when I talked to him today, we sort of talked a little bit about it. I was like, I know it's time to do this, And he was like, man, I'm so excited. He kind of even said enough talking, time to play. So I'm excited about him for that. But I agree with Nick. Don't forget the little guy. Really, I think Turpin has a shot. Okay. I really think that if he can figure things out. And just figured out the offensive side. We know he's going to be a good returner, but I think Turpin has a shot to do some things.
Well, then it was about this time last year. I'll be short, but it was about this time last year that Dennis Houston was starting to enter the conversation as well too. So don't worry about these undrafted guys. They're going to get their say too. And Houston's still around too. I mean, he's back again, and he's going to have a chance to continue to grow with Dak as well.
And Dennis Houston, he's going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, being that he was one of the camp stars last year, but he had a hard time breaking onto the field during the season. So he is coming into this camp wanting to, number one, stack good camps, but also this time around prove he's more than just someone who can show out at camp. But then when you segue to Simi Fehoko versus Jalen Tolbert, that's for me one of the most explosive head-to-head matchups going into training camp. And it's hard to say who has, more leverage than the other because Jalen Tolbert, former third-round pick, obviously that's instant leverage versus Simi Fehoko's status coming into the league. However, Simi Fehoko, he's been with the Cowboys longer. He has chemistry with both Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, and Will Grier now. So Simi Fehoko, he was a star of training camp last year before injuries kind of derailed his 2022 season. So he has the chip on his shoulder. But Jalen Tolbert has the chip on his shoulder. And Jalen and Simi are both being mentored not only by CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, but like you mentioned, Brandon Cooks as well. So it's hard to say who has the lead. If I had to say, I'd say 51-49 in favor of Fehoko simply because of longevity as far as in the system and with the quarterback. Yeah, science. But that's not a – well, you need math and science. You need math and science. Still nice. But I say that to say the margin of error is very slim between both of them. Both of them understand they're going to have to come into this year's camp and really step up and show s'more to Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy.
Corny. More for the rest of us.
That is your corny line that I'm going to get you about. Can't let that one slide.
I had a corny tweet. He had a corny line yesterday. Pat's now joined the club. Nick, you're next.
I blame the marshmallow.
I'm disgusted.
This show is a mess. Okay.
Dude, we're on fire right now. This is crazy.
Oh my gosh, get back on track. Obviously, another area that will be interesting as well is that running back position. And I asked Mike McCarthy today what he's looking for in terms of that second running back. Are they looking to fill the role that Ezekiel Elliott filled, or what's the criteria there? And I thought his answer was interesting because we've coined this term, the 1-2 punch, around here, and that's kind of been the status quo for the running game is that 1-2 punch. You've got Tony Pollard, the elusive, Zeke, who was the bruiser. Mike didn't feel like it was necessarily important to keep that same style in that 1-2 tandem. So when you look at the running back options that we have, you've got Rico Dowdle, you've got Deuce Vaughn, you've got Ronald Jones, who they brought in, and who's Malik Davis. Thank you. I could see his name his face in my head. All of which are very different running backs in terms of what they bring to the table. So if you're Mike McCarthy, what are you looking for really in that second spot to complement Tony Pollard?
I do want to touch on the fact that I think it's a fantastic approach to go into this, not trying to replace Zeke, because we've seen teams in the league try to replace a big-time back or replace a big-time presence maybe behind a starter back, and it goes very, very south. So we've seen it with the Ravens. We've seen it with the Steelers in the last 5 years. So going into this being, hey, we're not looking for Ezekiel Elliott. We're just looking for RB2. I think that's a great approach. But, who do I maybe feel like has the leg up here? I think just Ronald Jones because of what he brings physically. I think it's a lot different than the other group. He has obviously experience as well, more than the other group. So if I was a betting man, that's what I would put down right now. But I think it's going to be a really interesting competition. I don't think there's one guy that's out of it. I will say that.
For me, I think that it's a situation where who can run the ball between the tackles the best, and it's not always 3rd and 2. It's 1st and 10. Okay, Pollard has 2 series, and then now it's going to be Ronald Jones, or it's going to be Malik Davis. But if you can't first down, get the 5, get the 6, and move the chains, then it's going to be tough. And that was so good about last year. Two backs, they could kind of do different things, but they both had success. So who can run the ball between those two tackles and push the pile? We've seen it with Malik Davis against the Packers. You know, Pollard had a great game, but Davis had a good showing as well. So I think it's going to be the bigger of the backs, and that's why I think Malik Davis is the guy that's going to come in here.
Kind of adding on to that, but we're talking about not replacing Ezekiel Elliott. We're trying not to replace Zeke, but one of the key factors that he brought to the football team last year was pass protection.
Yes.
And even though that's not the number one thing that you should grade a running back on, you should grade him on a ton of different things.
But it matters.
Pass catching, it absolutely matters.
Especially when your offensive line currently is,
down their
in
best
question
player.
marks.
Yeah,
I was going to say in shambles,
trying to
but I
get
figured that was
through it.
dramatic.
So whoever can pass protect the best out of those backs, I think, is automatically going to have an advantage. Is automatically going to see some more reps. Even in the preseason, you don't want to see Cooper Rush go down. You don't want to see Will Greer go down. You got to pass protect in those situations just as much as you would protect Dak in the regular season.
You saying Dak's not going to play a preseason?
I mean, I don't want to break any news here, but I mean, come on now. So
if Zach Barnes not here, Dak
will not be here. You were exactly right. So I just think that pass protection, while it may not be number one, it's got to be high on the list because that's what Zeke brought to your team last year, and that's what you don't have, at least on the outside looking in, to start the year here in 23.
Yeah, I agree with that completely as far as pass pro is concerned. And I will say, although I don't think many could argue that Tony Pollard's pass pro is not the same as Ezekiel Elliott's, but that's not a knock to Tony Pollard because not many running backs in the league were able. No, but he was
pass protecting back in
right,
the league.
Exactly.
And Tony might be the best starting pass protecting back
Ezekiel
in the
Elliott
league.
was.
Zeke was.
Yes, Zeke was
specifically.
But I will say that Tony Pollard's pass pro has dramatically improved,
Yes,
even
it
over
has.
the past season, from one season to the next, from 2021 to 2022. It has improved. But even with his improvement, it's going to be interesting to see who can step up in the pass pro area and be that from an RB2 standpoint.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw a curveball here. We're talking about the short yardage version of Zeke, who's going to be able to kind of bully and run between the tackles. Well, here's the curveball. What about the mouse amongst the redwoods, right? Deuce Vaughn.
Not a mouse, Patrick.
Amongst the redwoods. If you go back and you look at Kansas State film and you look at what Deuce Vaughn has been able to do as far as short yardage, red zone, he disappears between the A gaps.
Sure.
It becomes difficult for those bigger, taller guys to get a hand on him before it even matters.
He was really good in the red zone.
Correct.
He was
So
really
I
good.
say that to say, going to Nick Harris's point, I love that the Cowboys are going into this camp with an open-minded approach as opposed to saying we need to find another Zeke archetype. They're simply saying we need to find a definitive RB2, but we're not afraid to mix it up. So when you see Deuce Vaughn in the game, does that mean he's definitely going to be out on the bubble screen? Not necessarily.
I know where you're gonna go.
I
know where you're going to go. You're going
Probably not.
not going to throw another curveball out there?
No, I'll let you go then.
No, I thought for sure Nick was going to
Hunter
throw Hunter Lipke.
Hunter Lipke.
Hey, he was going to be a part of my I'll say that right now.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I want to start it off with there are ways to negate it schematically, and we're talking about this offense. There's going to be a lot of West Coast implements, and that's horizontal concepts.
Texas Coast.
Exactly, Texas Coast.
Get it right.
Exactly.
Texas
But
Coast.
OG West Coast concepts. We're on the West Coast. We're on the West Coast. We got to show respect, you know.
West Coast.
We're showing respect.
Tell me when to go.
But Ezekiel Elliott were linebackers' biggest nightmare. And you want to get those linebackers back out in coverage, put them in horizontal concepts. That's why I think Deuce Vaughn probably has an advantage here, just because they're going to look for the short yardage guy now because they don't have that blitzing linebacker coming in. Granted, still going to need a running back that can provide help and pass protection, especially if the offensive line situation doesn't get worked out. But I think that's just another way to look at it. But Hunter Lipke, I think he might be the best pass protecting running back in the room.
Tell us why you like Hunter so much.
Just because he's so versatile. He's a true fullback, but that can also get out and play in the receiving game.
Would you call him a flex back?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly,
a flex back.
A flex back. Yep, and I think he can do a lot of different things. He may not be ready in year one, but year 2, year 3, I think he's going to be a really big asset to this
Nick
team.
Harris has been spending his offseason watching film.
Homework.
Did you hear that?
Let's flip the script a little bit here because obviously the pass protection immediately went in my head. It made me think of the tight end group that we currently have. Mike McCarthy and them touched on the fact that Dalton Schultz is no longer with us. So now you rely on a Jake Ferguson, a Peyton Hendershot, and Seth Green. A lot of these guys who are still pretty new to the organization. We saw the production from both Jake and Peyton last year. Now you add in Luke Schoonmaker, who's had some plantar fasciitis issues. I'm just kind of excited to see what that position battle looks like, because I think it's super underrated, because initially in my head it goes Jake Ferguson is the guy. But the things that Jake Ferguson lacks, Peyton Hendershot brings to the table, vice versa, and some of these other guys as well. I'm just excited to see that battle.
This has got to be Patrik. This is a sticky situation, and I think he needs it. Go for it. Go for tight end here.
Corny.
You set me up. You told me.
It was so good. It was
so
so
there
good.
you go.
Thank you.
Now it's complete.
You know what?
Now it is
dad jokes?
complete.
I'm out.
Bad jokes.
Bad jokes. All right,
Go
I'm
for it.
gonna
Love
head
was a
out.
good dad joke.
Go for it. Go for it. Tight end.
When it comes to the tight ends, I couldn't be more excited. And Dalton Schultz, he was one of the big producers for Dak Prescott, and he was Dak Prescott's favorite target when you look at it from a statistical standpoint. You don't have Dalton Schultz. I wrote a piece on the production that now needs to be replaced in the absence of Dalton Schultz. I think, but at the same time, I was ready to see Jake Ferguson unleashed. So when the Cowboys decided to part ways with Dalton Schultz, I didn't feel a way about it, because I'm ready for these young guns to get up there and really do some things. And to your point, they're so complementary that it's fantastic. Jake Ferguson is more of the downfield threat. He can get you that yak. You get him the ball in space, he can make some guys miss. Not to say that Jake can't, because we've seen Jake be able to do that, but his game is more a better of a pass protector than Peyton Hendershot. He's more of a security blanket. So those two complement themselves well. But then when you look at Luke Schoonmaker, yes, he's dealing with the plantar fasciitis, but I can't wait to see him get out there, because he's more of the complete. He's like Jake Ferguson plus Peyton Hendershot, and then you get to throw in some guys like Seth Green. We see what Sean McEwen can offer as well. So it's a young locker room as far as the tight ends are concerned, but the Cowboys have reason to be excited, and that's why they were able to, willfully part ways with Dalton Schultz. You got to love what you saw from Ferguson and Hendershot last year.
I think what's so exciting about this tight end room is that it's not cut and dry. It is not straightforward by any stretch, because like you said, Jake Ferguson might be the guy for now, but there are so many different aspects to this tight end room that can play a factor. I mean, Peyton Hendershot's the deep threat, take the top off. I've heard from multiple people that they really like John Stevens out of Louisiana Lafayette, rookie undrafted free agent. He could maybe come in and steal some snaps away here and there. Seth Green has been in the program for a year now. There are just multiple names thrown into the fold, and I think they're all going to get a shot, especially if Schoonmaker misses some practice time. And, of course, I would much rather see our second-round pick in the fold getting practice time. But if he's not out there, it allows some of these other young tight ends to maybe come in, rotate in, and see what you have. But it's also not a foregone conclusion that Ferguson or Hendershot will be the guy, because you look at the back half of last year, the final 8 games of the year, both of them were severely limited in their production. They still made strides in terms of pass protection. They made strides in learning the offense, but that was when Dalton Schultz really took over. So now it's wide open for all these young tight ends to come and take this position as their own, and that's what's exciting to me, because they might not be the security blanket that we've seen in the last couple of years with Jason Witten, and then toward the back half of his career, and then what Dalton Schultz was when he stepped in to the starting role. This might be something completely different from the tight end position that the Cowboys haven't had in quite some time.
Here's what's going to be fun about the Cowboys tight end position. The fact that if you're the opposing defense, I think more often than not, the opposing defense is actually going to, quote-unquote, forget about the tight ends.
Yeah, that's what I was just
you have to be
say.
concerned with CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup, and they could be a trip set. They might be on the field at the same time, maybe 2 to 3. But then you have to contend with Tony Pollard, depending on who RB2 is. But if Deuce Vaughn is back there, Hunter Lipke is back there. You have so many weapons at the skill position for the Cowboys offensively that I think there are going to be times, more often than not, where Jake Ferguson, Luke Schoonmaker, Peyton Hendershot, they're going to kind of fall between the cracks, and that becomes a big play, potentially a game-breaking play. So I think when you look at all the skill positions, the Cowboys tight end room will benefit. We talked about Gallup benefiting from Cooks being here. I think the tight end room will benefit from having so much talent surrounding them that opposing defenses will forget about them until it's too late.
Well, Schultz made a career out of it. I mean,
he did.
Out of the guy that no one really thought could be a difference maker and really respected that much as far as somebody that could hurt him. And then he had 65 catches, 60 plus catches like 2 years in a row. So. No disrespect to him, but he was never the focal point guy, but he can still, that position can serve as the security blanket. So that's a good thing. And Dak's not afraid to check it down and move the chains. So, because that extends the play. So I think guys like Ferguson and Schoonmaker for sure. And then if you get too greedy, Hendershot can kind of stretch the field.
That goes back to the horizontal aspect of the offense as well. If you're using those tight ends in space, why not throw them the football? Why not get the ball to them and make it an easy read for Dak Prescott? I mean, that's what Mike McCarthy's talked about all offseason, making things easier on your quarterback. And if these tight ends are able to get open, even if it's a little bit of separation, give him that window that's within 5 to 10 yards, that works for me. Yeah. Let's rack up the receptions.
They don't catch the ball and go down. When they catch the
Yeah.
ball, they're
They
looking
rumble.
they're looking to make the play. They're looking to make the guy miss.
Or jump, I was gonna say, or jump, or Texas two-step the way Jake Ferguson did the Eagles.
in Philly,
I forgot
there
about
you
that.
go.
Yeah, that's
so
my Philly
that's what I
special
mean.
for
So
being
when these
real.
tight ends get the ball, they're not looking to go down. They're looking to make the play. Yeah.
Last thing here before we wrap up here on our camping out segment. We start practices tomorrow officially, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot a little bit here. Who do you think will be the biggest surprise at camp this year?
Biggest surprise.
I'll start. 6th-round pick. You traded up to go get him. Cornerback from Southern Miss. As our lights go out on a nice night here in California.
You got time.
Eric Scott Jr.
I like it.
I think last year you saw what Deron Bland did at training camp. He was a day 3 draft pick. He was somebody that came in, was relatively under the radar. I think Eric Scott Jr. could do something very similar. He's got all those traits that when he gets rotations, he's going to take advantage of them. He'll start with a lot of special teams looks, just as Deron Bland did, but then you turn around and you've got a chance to maybe see Eric Scott Jr. make some noise by the time we're done out here in Oxnard.
I'm going to say Brandon Cooks, just because I don't think the fan base is talking about him enough. It doesn't feel like, when this team has talked about that Brandon Cooks gets brought up enough. And there are going to be some downfield action with him in training camp and with Dak. I think he's going to open a lot of eyes this month.
For me, I'll go to the linebackers, and I said that as far as who has the biggest jump is between Damone Clark and Sam Williams. So I think that's the conversation that the fans are having. But I'm going to look at Jabril Cox. I think Jabril Cox, you look at the confidence he was practicing with in OTAs and minicamp, made a couple of game-saving plays, what would have been game-saving plays in the 2-minute drills in minicamp. His confidence is sky high. He's much like Michael Gallup. He's farther removed from the torn ACL now. I talked to Jabril earlier today, and he, like Gallup, he's carrying this air of confidence that wasn't present until now. I think Jabril Cox is going to surprise a lot of people.
For me, I'm going to go with Matt Waletzko at left tackle or guard or right tackle, wherever they're going to use him. A lot of talk about Tyron, a lot of talk about Steele coming back and all that. But I think Waletzko's jump from year 1 to year 2, coming back from shoulder injury, I think he's going to give them some problems to have on the offensive line of figuring out what they're going to do with depth. But I think he's going to man one of those backup tackle positions, maybe even the swing tackle, and give them a little bit of security if one of these other, Steele's not ready or Tyron gets hurt. I like Waletzko. I think he has a chance to do something.
I like it.
I'm going to go on the rookie side, and I'm going to say DeMarvion Overshone, and I'm going to say it with the guys of now knowing him as a person. We had the opportunity to go down to ARP on Saturday and really get a feel for who he is as a player. And when you see the support fan base that he has back home in that city and his family, you get why he balls so hard. You get why he works so hard. And listen, this is a guy that Dan Quinn is very excited about in terms of special teams ability, but also really getting some reps in on the defense. So I'm thinking from that rookie group, I like Eric Scott, but I like Demo a little bit better. So keeping an eye on all of that for sure. We're going to go ahead and wrap up because I can't look at you anymore. Yes. You've got marshmallow all over your hands. It's all over the mic. So this has been so much fun. Thank you so much to Solo Stove for providing us with this awesome fire.
It's now our light, too.
Kyle, our lights are going out. Kyle, thank you for giving us the s'mores. Like I said earlier, practice gets underway tomorrow for the Cowboys as well. So we'll see some of those position battles get underway. But, guys, it's here. The 2023 season has officially started. For Kyle, Nick, Patrik, Nick, I'm Hailey Sutton. We will see you guys at practice tomorrow.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?